afternoon, everybody. Welcome to In the Zone. It's Thursday, May 18th. 74 degrees is what I heard today, Pete, in
Allegedly,
sunny
yeah.
Massachusetts.
Awfully cold when I woke up this morning. It was 33.
It's a perfect time in Massachusetts because in New England you're getting that great sleeping weather at night, and then the day just turns out to be beautiful, bright, and sunny. We're excited to be back in the zone. We are, believe it or not, on May 18th. You would think that there's not a lot to talk about, but that's not the case here. We've got plenty to talk about today, Pete. Feed 'em fish. We're going right off into John Morant. Another incident with a gun. Just want to spend a very, very quick minute on this. I don't want to spend much time talking about it. I just wish it wouldn't happen. I wish it wouldn't occur. I don't think it's. I don't think it's good for the league. I don't think it's good for Ja. So when I think that two things are not good for either entity, I don't know how you can get some good out of that. But just quickly, there's a lot of gun violence in this country. NBA players are respected and looked up to. Take the opportunity to do a good job with our young people and ensure them that that's a very serious thing and something not to be taken lightly. I think that's part of the problem. I think in some of those instances, it looks like we're taking that lightly. And even gun owners can tell you that's not something that anybody should ever take lightly. So we're just going to skip right off of that, Pete. Wanted to spend a minute today to start out this show because we've talked about this, we've glanced on it, and some people have even commented to me that in more depth would be something that would be included in this conversation because we've talked about the greatest basketball player of all time. So I wanted to talk briefly about the Ja Morant thing, not make too much of it, but now jump into because the conversation surrounding the GOAT it's a very, very interesting conversation. It's a lit conversation, as the young people like to say. It means that there's a lot of people with a lot of different opinion.
Yep.
And some really good supporting opinion as well. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to go three different ways today with it. I wanted to, number one, talk about why I think Larry Bird is the greatest player of all time. Secondly, I wanted to offer any opportunity for other people to make their cases because I have sat in conversations of this kind, and there are good cases to make for a lot of different people. What it is, I think, also is somehow personally driven as to what do you see in a basketball player, what makes the greatest basketball player can be a little bit subjective.
Question for you. Did the position you play in college influence your pick of greatest of all time?
No,
Okay.
no. I picked Larry Bird because for me it's very visual. When I watched him play the game of basketball, I say if you took a lot of the other players in the game, and you couldn't obviously do this, but if you strip them down of their God-given abilities, such as Michael Jordan's ability to almost fly on the basketball court, or Shaquille O'Neal with 7 foot, 300-pound frame that can move at a very, very rapid and agile pace. You look at that and then look at Larry Bird and say we're considering some of those people in the same conversation because he wasn't, although he was a good athlete and was a tall player and had some good attributes that way, you wouldn't describe him as one of the greatest athletes ever to play the game. That's what drives my thinking a little bit as well when we say who is the greatest basketball player. Okay, obviously in that conversation you have to have Michael Jordan because Michael Jordan could certainly be 1A for me. I enjoyed watching him play growing up as a college player and as a pro. Certainly could get him into the conversation. And in the modern day era, you would have somebody, of course, LeBron James would come into that discussion. I think what happens also is you have a lot of people who are in this discussion who didn't really live through the older times. When you have young people in this discussion, and it's great to have them, they've only seen LeBron play. They haven't even seen Michael Jordan play. Forget Larry Bird. Forget Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Some of the other great conversations that you might have in around it. So when I describe the GOAT of all time, a lot of people, when they describe Michael Jordan's career, they talk about all the great attributes that he had, the scoring, the assists, the rebounding. But what sets Michael Jordan apart in the conversation sometimes, I think, is that he was 6-0 in NBA Finals. He got into the finals 6 times and never lost. There's also another side piece to that is that Michael Jordan never beat Larry Bird in an NBA playoff game. And so that's an interesting little tidbit,
Wow.
in fact, as well. Their careers intersected for a very, very brief time, but LeBron James is part of the conversation as well. Now, here's the part where I'm going to get into it with people, and I think that people can certainly disagree with this, but I certainly want to raise this point because I think there's a bell curve that has to go on here a little bit when we consider this as well. The players that played in the old NBA didn't play in the new NBA. Okay? And there's a difference of physicality, there's a difference of officiating, there's a difference of all of those things that happened when they played. Some of them didn't play with the three-point shot as well. And so now when we go in and we have to formulate, when Larry Bird and Magic Johnson basically saved the NBA from irrelevance. It was basically those two gentlemen that saved the NBA. Okay, so when you're part of a duo that put the entire league on your back and brought it to its current day relevance, I think that matters as well in the game.
Right.
Now, what happened with Jordan? There's the new series Air out. I haven't seen it yet. I've seen snippets of it. Looks really, really good, especially the portrayal of Mrs. Jordan that I've seen as a very strong mother figure in some of the conversations that led up to him signing a contract with Nike and becoming the brand. Air Jordan, becoming the sneaker. You know, obviously when he stepped into the shoe, it was a bit of a Cinderella moment for the NBA, a little bit of a Cinderella moment for Nike as well, because this is the guy who can light up the shoe for sure.
Wasn't it a revolutionary moment, like for professional sports? Because at that time, you know, sporting good companies really didn't align other than providing the ball itself, but they didn't align with the players as much.
Never like this.
Right.
Never like this. And that was new. It was new to the game. And so when you had a player that became as important as he was to the entire framework, infrastructure, and every aspect of the NBA, it became almost like after Bruce Lee made his first movies.
Sure.
You know, he couldn't go to competitions and fight Chuck Norris anymore or any of the great fighters anymore because a loss then would make you not, you know, the five fingers of death.
It would, it would mess with your mythos.
It would crush your entire persona.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so when Michael Jordan entered into that new NBA, that new framework, you can look at the way some of the officiating changed. You can look at the way some of the things changed. And when you played in an NBA that created, with an immense talent that Michael Jordan had, almost a downhill impact for him in that when he went near the basket, he was called fouls.
Yep.
Now it's been taken to the absolute extreme where there's video of LeBron James all over the court almost calling his own fouls. It's almost like we're on West 4th Street and you get to call your own fouls because LeBron James is now almost calling his own fouls. He makes a gesture. He makes a head movement. He falls down. The referee blows the whistle. It's absolutely tilted the game, and that's why I think it's been great for business. Michael Jordan made a lot of money. LeBron James has made a lot of money very, very recently, and so there's been a lot of success of them as a basketball player as well too. But when I think there's a vested interest in how the league operated and how they wanted to have that success, I think that filtered into all sorts of the area of the game, even into their opponents, where their opponents were convinced that, you know, fouling Michael Jordan hard isn't a good idea because he's the number one product in our league. And so that became the thinking and the ethos as well. And so to play in that environment was a distinct advantage. That's why I consider Larry Bird the greatest of all time. Now, who would be some of the other people that never really get discussed about in that conversation? And I wanted to take 1 second just to mention some of their names. How about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Pete?
Yeah.
Wilt Chamberlain scored 100 points in an NBA game.
And scored with every woman that walked through his.
Those accomplishments weren't as validated as his points and rebounds were. But certainly outstanding.
Legendary, but these are all like legendary figures.
Certainly
Yeah.
outstanding if that was the mode. So I'd like to throw Oscar Robertson out there
Absolutely.
as the triple double king. Magic Johnson,
Yep.
again with Larry Bird, they saved the NBA. This is a conversation that I think you could have with people, and if you want to go, stat for stat and this, how about Bill Russell?
Yep.
How about Bill Russell of the Boston Celtics? The amount of rings that he has is consecutive,
Yep.
and the dominance that they had in the league that time. And that was at the time Wilt Chamberlain was in the league.
Right.
That was at the time Jerry West was in the league. Actually, Jerry West was at the NBA Combine yesterday. He looks so great. It's amazing.
We talk about Brady Belichick. How about Red Auerbach and Russell?
Oh my God. Look at the
You
tandem.
think about that tandem coach, right? Yeah.
If you go back and look at the numbers, they talk about Brady and Belichick, and there's been some other great, combinations in sports history, but there is nothing that compares to that.
Yeah.
Nothing on any level of sports that compares to that. The New York Yankees and all of their winning had some great, great accomplishments back in the day as well, but nothing compares to the level of dominance that they had. Red Auerbach was smoking a lot of cigars back in that day.
Yes,
he busted out that
was.
victory cigar on everybody.
Yep.
And so I think Bill Russell would certainly get some consideration. But again, when you have that conversation, is Kobe Bryant one of those in the conversation? Tremendous athlete, tremendous work ethic, tremendous basketball player. His dad, Jelly Bean Bryant, was an NBA player as well too. So just some thought there, Pete. Just some thought there. So now we're going to jump right back in and light it up with the NBA playoffs. We're really, really into the thick of things right now. It's an exciting time. Conspiracy theorists are lighting up YouTube, the internet, TikTok with all of these crazy, crazy stories that they think that the NBA is rigged, that the NBA is fixed. Go figure.
Ooh, big surprise.
But
they brought that upon themselves, no?
Well, I love these conspiracy theories that turn out, and then 6 months, a year, 5 years, 50 years later, you find out, wow, that wasn't a conspiracy theory at all, really. The term conspiracy theory was coined by none other than the CIA. So I think that sometimes, is a way to, hey, don't look over here, look over there. That's a conspiracy theory. Of course, it's not true. And then later on, you find out, wow, that was true. So with the NBA, in regard to that, we could talk about that a little bit, But right now, I want to get into the playoffs where we're at. The Celtics the other night, they're locked up with the Heat. And when they have the game where they ask, that question of who was the one who did it, who did it? Well, it was the Butler, and it was Jimmy Butler for the Miami Heat down that game. He's been carrying that team since they were a play-in team in the playoffs, and he is putting on an absolute show right now. He's offensively so difficult to stop. Eric Spoelstra has really done a good job in spacing the floor, getting him into situations where he can create and where he can be effective offensively. And I think that's part of it right now. I wanted to make note of something that I think one of the things that people are wondering, we talked about the Heat. You talk about Jimmy Butler. Last week we talked about their bench a little bit. But I think there's something that goes on that I wanted to mention, and this is something I caught on the sidelines a little bit.
Okay.
And so Eric Spoelstra has been in the NBA for a long time now. He's coached LeBron. He's coached some great players and everything like that. And now he has Jimmy Butler. And Jimmy Butler is an NBA player who has great talent and immense talent. And he's emerged as one of the great players in the game right now. But to say that what goes along with coaching a player with that immense talent, sometimes immense ego, becomes a bit of a problem. So there was an exchange on the sidelines the other night. And Eric Spoelstra has been in the league a long time, and most people would not really cite him as a combative person, as somebody who is going to go outside as in a Bobby Knight type fashion and start. But he got into an exchange with Jimmy Butler the other day on the sidelines during a timeout, and he was absolutely verbally going after Butler, and he was giving it to him left and right, and I love to see it. And Butler came back at him, but Spoelstra held his ground as a coach, and that's what's missing a lot of times in the NBA. These guys get paid a lot of money. They're superstars. LeBron James hasn't had a real coach in a number of different years that's going to be able to coach him and to dictate offense to him, and this is the way we're going to do things. And so that part of it, that leadership kind of tilt, that leadership paradigm shift has really gone in the NBA and made a difference. But I love to see Spoelstra being combative with his best player the other day, because if you're not getting what you want out of your players, there's only, sometimes there's only one direction you can go as a coach. And a lot of coaches in the NBA don't want that role. A lot of coaches in the NBA don't want to take that on. I want to say that that's probably part, here it is right here. Yep, and you see people are getting between them. But Spoelstra's absolutely giving it to him. And you don't see that often. But when a coach does that, believe me, the other players in that locker room are listening. The other players in that locker room are responding. And now everybody's gotten around Jimmy Butler and everything, but he's coming back in here now, and he's look at him. He's right up in there making his point. He's saying to the other guys on the team, we can't operate like this. Butler seems to be doing an awful lot of talking.
Somebody else, another player's calling another timeout.
Yep, and they go down the line here a little bit, and so that I thought that a lot of people look at that and they look at that, oh my God, look at this, it's terrible. That's really, really a good exchange between a coach. I'm not gonna fault either one of those guys. You're in the playoffs.
No, that's the heat of the moment. Yeah,
it can get heated, But I like the fact that Spoelstra, Eric, went out there and he made his piece, and made his point, And I like that. A lot of coaches these days are backing off these great players, and if you want to have a good team and you want to keep winning, everybody has to be accountable on the basketball court. Otherwise, you lose the locker room. Otherwise, you lose your players that are not in that role. He's a superstar, but it has to be held to the same standard as everybody else when it comes to basketball things, when it comes to culture, when it comes to ethos. And those are really, really important things. In the playoffs, I wanted to talk about this also. People are talking about, is the NBA rigged? Is the NBA designed? And so here's a little piece of it that I think would be interesting for conspiracy-minded people. I don't say the NBA is rigged. I say sometimes that the NBA would like to have a certain result because it's good for business.
Sure.
They're a business, all right? What is the conspiracy this year?
Who's the heel?
The conspiracy is that the NBA wants the Lakers and the Celtics to play in the finals to break the tie of 17 titles apiece, to see who would then hold the NBA record for the most titles. Right now they share it. And so a win in that direction for either one of those teams, whether they play each other for it or if one of the teams was to get it, that would certainly break the tie. Paramount for the NBA would be, okay, we got Boston and LA back like the old days.
Sure.
They can do all the retro inspectives that they want because now you have Larry Bird and Magic and all of those great moments that happened in LA with that before.
You have a storyline,
all
right?
the great players. Yep. Yeah. You got East Coast, West Coast covered with your TV market arenas. So I think that they, let's not say that they don't pray for those things in NBA land. But here's a couple of things that I wanted to offer up, and you make your own. You can make your own assumptions from it. My guy, Bob Bremet, friend of mine from New York, had asked a question whether he thought the Warriors were going to go to the foul line incessantly this year and go to the NBA Finals by what they would call almost design. And, those are the theories that are out there, okay? Here's some backup on what I wanted to explain to my friend Bob is that I think they got reversed this year. I think the Warriors got supported one year, and I think they got reversed because this is a better storyline. Golden State Warriors in the finals is not the same as the Lakers and the Celtics right now. And this is where some things that make you go, all right.
Well, Golden State look like I'm looking at the bracket here. They just barely got by Sacramento.
Yep.
And then the Lakers the Golden State gave them a tough time, but not that tough of a time.
Well, here's maybe why we can shed some light on that. In Game 1, Lakers and Warriors, Lakers shot 29 free throws. The Lakers shot 6. Excuse me. The Lakers shot 29 free throws. The Warriors shot 6.
Yep.
Game 2, 17 by the Lakers, 16 by the Warriors.
Okay.
Warriors win by 30.
Wow.
Game 3, 37 for the Lakers, 17 for the Warriors. Game 4, 20 for the Lakers, 12 for the Warriors. Game 5, 15 and 15. Warriors win by 15. Game 6, 42-14.
Wow.
Now,
Wow.
I want to explain something to our fans and everybody out there as well, what this actually means. So if you're a high school coach, which I was one time, and you go into an opposing gym and you take a 42-14 free throw differential, your chances of winning that game, if you're Red Auerbach himself, is probably 50%.
Yep.
Because a lot of the free throws will get missed. So you might have a chance to stay in there. All right, now let's move up to a college game. You're out on the road and you catch a 42-14 while you're out on the road as a college basketball team. Your odds, your chances of winning that game, even with the great Pete Carril coming out and coaching your team, that would give you maybe a 20% chance to win that game.
Yep.
Now go to the NBA, where most of the shooters are 70 to 75% free throw shooters or better, and go 42-14. Your chances of winning that game are less than 0. Just wanted to throw some math out there at everybody. Less than 0.
Yeah, because you're going to get pummeled. You're getting pummeled at the line like that.
Unbelievable. 42-14. And so when people say conspiracy theory, I say, well, let's look at some of the facts and let's make our own assertions on that. All right, I got a good one for you here, though, Pete. The Miami Heat playoff roster that we just talked about, all those guys that were holding Jimmy Butler back,
Yep.
7 players went undrafted in the NBA draft. 7 players on their roster were not drafted in the NBA draft. They made it from coming to camp and making the team otherwise. I thought that was really, really cool. Here's another stat for you if you want to be a conspiracy theorist and say, okay, well, every once in a while the free throws might look good. But the NBA keeps this stat as well. I was a little surprised that they keep this stat, but they do. So it's called game officiating errors, which they're aware of, that they can spot. And in there you have game officiating errors that are cited for one team of the other. In Game 6, which was a pivotal game for the Sixers and for the 76ers and the Celtics, it was Celtics plus 13, Sixers plus 4. So the Celtics were recipient of 13 erroneous game officiating calls, while the Sixers were the beneficiary of just 4, which comes out to a plus 9 in possessions. So if that's 2 points of possession, let's say you operated at 50% of those 9 possessions. Okay, and you got 2 points for each one of those. So it's 4.5 times 2 points. You wind up with, that's 10 points. That's a 10-point differential. Tell me that can't swing a game.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we switch into the playoffs a little bit, and we talk about, first, life in the NBA is really, really well paid, well compensated, and it's a famous lifestyle, you know. But boy, is it getting tough up there. When we talked recently in the college segment, we had our coaching carousel for the college segment.
Yep.
As I alluded to a couple of shows ago, and I can't believe this is show 10, Pete. We made it to show 10. It's unbelievable. But what I alluded to back when we discussed the carousel in the college game was, wow, 59 jobs changed hands, almost 60 jobs changed hands. And what I alluded to then was, okay, wait a little bit and hold on to your hat, because then we're going to move into the NBA carousel. And when you get into the NCAA carousel and you look at the whole thing from they fired, they hired, oh my God, they did this, they did that. You look at it and you go, wow, ooh, You know, when you get to the NBA carousel, it's really, really boring. Okay, and I'll tell you why. Because the same guys are up for the same jobs as soon as they get fired, the minute they get fired. All right? So what's occurred so far? The Bucks had the best record in the East this year. They had an unbelievable run of 2 years. Okay? They fired their coach. Budenholzer has been fired. Okay, I want to read you some numbers, Pete, that are maybe going to be a little bit astonishing. His lifetime, because I think he coached the Atlanta Bucks for a while too, the Atlanta Hawks, excuse me, in addition to the Bucks. He has 487 wins and 317 losses. In NBA life, that's unbelievable. Okay? Now, in his present job, 271 wins and 120 losses for the Milwaukee Bucks. And they said, "Sir, you're fired." It's almost like an episode of The Apprentice. Number 2, Monty Williams just got eliminated from the playoffs. Immediately after getting eliminated from the playoffs, he is released from his job. Now, this is somebody who was the National NBA Coach of the Year just a year or two ago. So I don't know how he lost his marbles all the way in that short a period of time. He lost his fastball, but in a 4-year period, he was Coach of the Year, 194 and 115 for the Phoenix Suns.
Wow. And you still got.
And he got
Wow.
whacked. He got whacked. I think maybe the standards could be getting a little too high in the NBA as far as coaching goes. But let's persevere on.
Or in a players' league, did the players just say that they don't want him anymore, and that would be enough to get rid of him?
I would assume.
Yeah.
I would assume that has something to do with it. But we still keep going. It's inexplicable because all of these coaches are playoff coaches too. It's not like they were losing. Doc Rivers, they just lost to the Celtics, and just like Monty Williams from the Suns, they walked in and fired him. In 3 years, Doc Rivers has been fired more times than a Civil War cannon. So I don't know how he keeps on getting jobs after this, but he loses his job almost every 3 years. Doc Rivers, 154 and 82 with the 76ers, just taken out of his job. Interesting tidbit was that I had heard through the rumor mill that Kelvin Sampson, the head coach at the University of Houston, is being talked to quite possibly by the Milwaukee Bucks.
So
I'm not 100% sure about that, but he has had NBA assistant coaching experience.
Okay, so he's got some experience in the big show.
He does, and that rumor does make sense. If anybody in the NCAA can jump into the NBA and finally be a successful coach, stay a while, I think that might be your guy. I think Kelvin Sampson would have the highest ability to do it. Okay. Lakers and Heat. What happened, Pete? Game 1 in the Boston Garden. The place is rocking. The defense chant is going well. Tatum and Brown get off. They're cooking. And then at the end of the game, they just don't make good decisions. Their play calling didn't look good to me. And then at the end, Jimmy Butler just came up and made some incredibly, incredibly great plays. The Heat have done an incredible job in each series that they've played. They've been on the road a number of different times in the series, and they've broken the home team's court advantage each and every time. That game last night, I watched it in its entirety, and they just hung in there. They hung in there. They were down by 7. They were down by 8. And I'm sitting there as a guy who likes the Celtics too. I'm sitting there going, that's not enough. They're not far enough away from this. Then it got to be 6. Then it got to be 3. The issue that they're having is the construct of the Heat is a bit of a problem, because around Butler, who's a great one-on-one offensive threat, they have put shooters just about everywhere. And so if you make one defensive error, make one defensive mistake, that ball's going into the hands of a shooter, and their shooting has been incredible late in this tournament. That's one of the reasons that they are where they are. Butler's been playing great, but their supporting cast has been absolutely phenomenal in their ability to take shots, make shots, and keep the runs going for the Heat. I think the Celtics might be able to rebound here in Game 2, but when you get broken in a series, that's difficult, and that's tough to overcome. And so I think what's happening with the Celtics, I have to be honest, I didn't think the Celtics were a great team all along. I thought you have Jason Tatum, and I thought Jaylen Brown, excellent. They've gone to the 2 bigs now with Horford and Williams, and Williams is a great defender and does a lot of good stuff, but neither one of those gentlemen is an NBA offensive guy that's going to carry you as a third wheel. You know, then they bring Brogdon. I don't understand why they play Derek White as much as they do, but they do. And I just don't get that sometimes. But I think that there's a lot of, Marcus Smart isn't a true point guard. They have him playing the one. He's played pretty good and made some really good decisions with the ball. Also now kind of hitting some big shots in some big moments for them as well. But the 76ers gave them a problem a little bit. That exposed them, I thought. And I thought right now the Heat just figured out a way to stick around in that game one and really make something of it. So the next game, obviously, for the Celtics is pivotal. Their two guys played pretty well, though, so it's going to have to come from somewhere else. They're going to have to get some contributions. We go back to the Warriors when they had a big win in the Lakers series where Wiggins and Draymond Green played great. They had great games. The Celtics need a great game out of Hofford. They need a great game out of Williams, and they need their two superstars to keep on going. But I like the Heat. I like the way that they have a rhythm right now. They come down the floor. Nothing bothers them. They stay in good rhythm. Maybe they have some controversy with maybe what do you think Spoelstra and him were arguing about?
It looked pretty heated about something.
Looked pretty heated. As a coach, probably, my guess would be, I have no idea what they were talking about, but I'm just going to say my guess would be that they possibly had called a play and Butler was playing well maybe, and the play wasn't called for him, and he wound up taking the play for himself anyway. And so that, I'm just going to guess, that happens in the NBA sometimes, 24-second clock. But sometimes when the coaches feel like some of the better players are breaking down their play calling, I think that can get heated a little bit. I don't know. But I'd like to know, because I thought it was something that it brought the team together a little bit in that moment, and they were able to sustain. So on the other side, we've got the Lakers and the Nuggets. Nuggets are, I'm going to give them a nickname right now. They are Jugger Nuggets. They're a juggernaut offensively, and the Nuggets are like back in Larry Moe days with the offensive threats that they have, with the way that they move the ball. Jamal Murray and Jokic are really, really tough 1-2 punch there. But when I say, like I was just talking about the Celtics, when I say that you have the 1-2, and everybody has the 1-2 in the NBA, what are your complementary players like? And I think that's what makes the Nuggets really, really special. Excuse me. I think that's what makes them a special team, because their complementary players are really, really good. You have, just a real array of good offensive players. Coach Malone has done a great job with them, and they actually just came out and pummeled the Lakers in Game 1. So I think the NBA would like to have the Lakers and the Celtics in there. Right now, after Game 1, you'd have to say it looks more like the Heat than the Nuggets, because they're leading right now. But I thought the Nuggets came out with an offensive array that was really impressive the other night. The Lakers don't play defense. And so unless they start getting a lot more foul calls like they did in the Warriors series when they go back home, maybe some of that starts to occur. But if they don't start finding a way to stop the Nuggets, they're not going to beat them. And they don't play defense generally. So I think that's a problem for them going forward. But we'll see. We'll see. But again, going back to that carousel, if you noticed that, now you have the coach of the Bucks, and they're looking at a list of people. Some of the people that they'll be looking at, you have Frank Vogel, who was let go before, and you have some other people that might be in that list somewhere down on that line. So now you sit here and say, oh my God, it's really just reshuffling the deck chairs. A lot of, it doesn't create a lot of opportunity for some young coaches that are trying to get in and trying to get that first head opportunity because they keep recycling the same people. I think that's a little bit unhealthy for the game. Let some of the young coaches come in. Get some more college coaches in there too. I'd like to see some of the I would have liked to see Mike Krzyzewski coach an NBA team. He was a Duke through and through, a Blue Devil through and through, and his career was better served by staying there, not going to the Lakers when they offered him the job. But I would like to see some of the other coaches get in there. Possibly, if it was in a different time, maybe you'd see Rick Pitino as he aged a little bit, maybe get back in there, and Calipari maybe would have been good at it. Later on in the career a little bit, I don't know. We'll see. But let's shift a little bit out of the playoffs. We can come back to it a little bit when we talk about what we think we'll see in the next round. But I spent the entire day yesterday, Pete, looking at what's going to happen in the NBA draft. And when I looked at our draft, and then I looked at the combine yesterday, I'm going to leave here today and I'm going to head back home because day 2 of the combine is on today. I'll get another evaluation day today. But I came out of yesterday and I said the crystal ball has been shaken up. It looks like a snow globe that you would shake up at Christmas, because everything that I thought going into this, I now see some things differently. Okay? There are some guys that I thought I was, skeptical of in this draft. They kind of reinforced my skepticism from what I've seen. I haven't seen some of those guys. Hopefully, we'll see them today. We're talking about Jerace Walker from Houston. We're talking about Grady Dick from Kansas. We're talking about Cam Whitmore from Villanova. 3 of those guys are listed somewhere in the lottery pick of like somewhere from 7 to 15. I'm not high on any of those 3 players in that slot. I promised on my Twitter account today that we were going to give you a pick of a player that we saw in the draft combine that I think if this continues, I would think that this gentleman would probably rise significantly in NBA general managers' eyes. I'm going to say right now that I think if you're an NBA general manager and you saw what I saw yesterday, you're going to go out and you're really going to start to do your homework on this young Serbian big man. He looks a lot like Doncic. He looks a lot like Jokic. He's a 6'10", 6'11", big man that can shoot the ball outside. I'm probably going to murder his name, but we'll give it to you slowly so you can get it. It's Tristan Vukcevic. Okay, I don't think I did too bad with that.
No, it sounds pretty
but
good.
It's Vukcevic, and he played yesterday. I loved his game. I really, really think that that's somebody, if you're an NBA draft person and you see what I see yesterday, you got to move him up on your draft board. I don't know if you had him on your draft board. You're going to need to move him up significantly because he's really, really good. All right, so we got some good news. We got some bad news from the combine. I think we'll get out some of the bad news first. UConn fans, locally, I wanted to just be honest up front, and haven't seen Hawkins go yet, okay? But we have good news, bad news scenario for you. The bad news scenario is Aaron Jackson yesterday didn't play as well as I thought he could have. It wasn't terrible. He wasn't anything that I said, oh, my God, he's not a first-round draft pick. I still think he's a first-round draft pick. Maybe now could slip into the second round a little bit. But I had him a little higher. I liked him a little bit more from seeing him. But then when he was out on the court with those other really great players yesterday, I watched him a little bit. I didn't have the same feel for him. But now, for the good news for our Husky faithful is I watched Adamo Sanogo yesterday, and I think he's got a really, really good place in the NBA. I think he's going to be able to stay in the NBA for a lot of years. I don't know exactly where he fits in, whether he's going to be a center, he's going to be a four-man, but he impressed me yesterday with his athleticism, ability to get up and down the floor. One of the things you always look for, and this is for all of your NBA general managers, if your big men can't catch the ball, they can't play. Okay, and so Sanogo catches the ball pretty good. I thought he, did a decent job of it. Not, it's difficult with big guys, but I think he's really, really athletic and has a really good upside. He's not like a really, really full Bam Adebayo complimentary player, where he's just a starter, but he's more of a complimentary starter. I see him as a guy who could come off the bench for a really, really good long time, though. And so we'll look at Hawkins a little bit today, but I wanted to go into our Game 1 episode there that we saw and who we liked, and then we'll go to Game 2 real quick. I have been high on this young man for a good amount of time. I'm going to say it again, but we're going to bump him up our draft board as well. Here's what we have to do now, Pete, because we might as well tell the people we're going to be on a hiatus next week on the 25th, and then we'll pick it back up. And when we pick it back up, we're going to redo our draft that day because now we have all of the factors, all of the different stuff to go into it. I would say I have Tristan Vukcevic probably somewhere in the lottery pick now that we have to shake that up. I don't have Wembanyama that high, but I'm waiting to see. I believe the Thompson twins are in the combine, and we'll see them today. I didn't see them yesterday, I don't think, but we'll take a better look at that. I did tape it, so we're going to go back at that as well.
Okay.
But Azuolas Tubelis from Arizona, I really like him. Good size, good shooting ability. This young man impressed me yesterday. I'd seen him in the NCAA tournament a little bit, and he really impressed me yesterday. He might be one of the best shooters in the draft. He's out of Penn State, and his name is Seth Lundy. We're going to move him up on our draft board as well because he has good size, but what a release on his jump shot. I haven't seen too many guys in the combine that shoot it better than he does. We talked about Adamo Sanogo. I like him. Late first round, he's not going to hurt you. Okay, this gentleman they call Olmax Prosper. His name is Olivier Maxence Prosper. He played for Marquette, played very well yesterday. He's big, he's fluid, he's agile. He can get up and down the floor. He's 6'10". I want to see him if he can shoot the ball away from the perimeter a little bit more. I'd like to see some of that. But I thought he played very well yesterday. Somebody who's probably not on everybody's draft radar right now, but I'd get him in there. Drew Timme from Gonzaga was there yesterday. Big man. Here's a little bit of a note that I wanted to. One of the things that they do at the Combine, I don't know if it's a valuable thing, but I guess sometimes it is what they do is they ask everybody to take their shoes off, and they measure them from the ground up. Now, Timme had always been listed like 6'11", in the NBA Combine, but we have him here, 6'8", no shoes. So that to me, really kind of bumps him down a little bit. And his teammate Julian Strother also didn't really get rave reviews out of some general managers that were there because they didn't feel his level of training was very, very good. And so the two of them for Gonzaga, very, very great NCAA team, great careers that they had. I think I'm going to bump them down a little bit, though.
Okay.
Hunter Tyson from Clemson. I don't know if he can. Some of these gentlemen can return to school. Some of these gentlemen can go back to college. Hunter Tyson, who was in their draft from Clemson, he's an elite shooter. If he can go back to Clemson, he better get on the bus right now because I don't see him getting drafted. Amari Bailey from UCLA. I don't love his game, but he put on a good display yesterday. He scored the ball very well. He scored it on some difficult shots. He's left-handed. He has some very nice cadence to his game. Not a big fan. I don't know where he would fit in the draft board right now, but he showed something yesterday. He showed that he was out on that floor with good players and really did a good job.
I have a question for you. If a player does not get drafted, can they go back to school? Or do they have to go back beforehand?
Well, there's a deadline for them to say that, and that's coming soon after the Combine.
Okay.
And so it has to be before the draft, obviously, but they get a chance taking my name out 10 days after the Combine where they can say, I'm returning to college and I'm taking my name out of the draft. After that, if they get drafted, it's a done deal.
Okay.
So we have Reese Beekman from University of Virginia. I had seen him play during the year. He has a good NBA frame. I'd like to see a little bit more of this gentleman, but he has a good NBA frame. I think he could work his way into the first round. A gentleman yesterday, if you're looking at this like, okay, who's rising, who's moving up, Isaiah Wong did himself a good deal yesterday because he came out of Miami. I'm not 100% sure of him about translation. And when we say translation, we mean does he translate his game, his body, his physique, his entire approach to basketball? Does that translate well to the NBA? And there's some question marks there, but yesterday I thought he helped himself well. He really, really, with Jim Larinaga, my former player Chris Caputo, who's an assistant at Miami, he really does pick and roll reads well. He handles his reads very, very well on pick and roll. That makes me believe that he might be able to stick in the NBA a little bit. I don't know. We'll have to see with him. But I think, if anything, he probably went up. His stock probably went up a little bit. Then you have, as we talked about, Andre Jackson. I don't really love him, as much as I did. I think he's going to get bounced down. Terrence Shannon from Illinois played well yesterday. I've always liked this young man, always liked his game. I would bump him up a little bit. I think he's going to make a move up. Terquavion Smith is a high-volume scoring point guard from North Carolina State. He can do a lot of things, and when he shoots the ball, he can really score it and do some good things. I think he's a little bit more egocentric as a point guard than some NBA teams might go for, but he can score, he can play. I'd give him a bump up yesterday because I thought his shooting ability is really strong, and I like that. Oscar Tshiebwe from Kentucky, give him a bump up, Pete. He didn't have a good year at Kentucky, but he's talented. He's 6'11", runs the floor pretty well. I think you give him a little bump up. I'm gonna get him up there. Anthony Black, Julian Strother, I really had a better feel for them going in. I don't after watching them. I think that they're going down. And Black is a gentleman that is very highly rated. I just don't get it. Kendrick Price from Memphis, he was originally at SMU, was there. Kendrick Price, I love this young man, but translation is the key with him. I really don't know. He's a little bit small. He doesn't really light it up from the outside, so you don't have to play him and, as tight as you might. But he gets to the basket. He's a really good point guard, and I think that's somebody to keep your eye on. If you want a good second-round pick and you get that young man in the second round, I think you're doing yourself pretty good. So in Game 2 was really interesting. Game 1 was a bit of a blowout. So it's when they're blowouts, it's difficult to evaluate sometimes because everybody turns it into more of an all-star game.
Yep.
But my guy Tristan Vucevic from Serbia came out in Game 2 yesterday, and I'm watching this guy going, uh-oh, it's Scottie Pippen time. This gentleman is going to take his stock, and it is going to be a meteoric rise. I'm going to stand by what I said yesterday. I thought that there's too many guys on this team in the Combine. They're not playing enough games for you to really get a mix. They also have to play more games against each other. So what they should have done is broken these teams down into smaller groups, let them play more. They spent an entire day of doing testing to see how high you can jump, to see how fast you can slide across the lane, all of those things. I'm sure they're important, but I don't know why they take a whole day. The crux of the matter, the revelation of all of this is when they play against each other. And I think the young man yesterday was pretty good. I wasn't high on this gentleman going in as a pro, but I'm going to maybe give him a little bit of time and maybe look a little further. Judah Mintz from Syracuse, I think he might be a gentleman that you see takes his name out. Atlantic 10, good news for the A-10. I really was high on this gentleman going in because I saw him in the A-10 and I said, wow, he's as good as anybody in the country as a big man. Deron Holmes from Dayton, I'm going to move him up. Pete. He played real well yesterday. I like him. Arthur Kaluma from Creighton, I like him. He's a good player. Amani Bates from Eastern Michigan. Not sure if Amani can go back to Eastern Michigan. He's had a bit of a troubled past in the NCAA a little bit. He's a talented player. He can score. He can do a lot of different things, but I just don't know with him in the NBA right now. I think that's a bit of a leap. How much time do we have, Pete?
12 minutes.
12 minutes. Beautiful.
We're cruising today.
We are absolutely cruising. Okay, so the Combine was good. I'm going to be back there to later today to watch, and I have it taped, so I'm going to go over it a little bit more. We did the draft arranged order. So we have now the NBA, and we have who will draft and who will draft in what order.
Okay.
So I'm going to give it to you now. Number 1 is the San Antonio Spurs. They received the number 1 pick overall. And by all indications, unless something changes dramatically, I think that they'll take Victor Wembanyama with that pick. I don't know if they would trade that pick.
Okay.
There's so much, so much hype about Victor Wembanyama right now that it's almost impossible for the people in San Antonio. There's almost a bit of Stockholm syndrome right now, because if you decide to trade down and he turns out to be the greatest player like everybody says he's going to be, then you look really, really bad.
Correct.
But I think at 7'3", they list him at 225 pounds. I'm not sure about all that because he's extremely thin. But I just think the knockaround in the NBA for him is going to be different. But San Antonio has the number 1. In number 2, you have Charlotte. The Hornets are going to draft number 2, Maybe Scoot Henderson in that pick. We'll see. Portland and Houston. Word on the street is that they might go with the Thompson twins. Darius, not there, the young Miller gentleman from Alabama didn't help himself yesterday at the combine, in my mind, if he wants to be the number 2 pick. I didn't see enough from him yesterday. He has talent. He also has a tendency to just kind of fade and blend. And I think that's difficult when you're going to draft somebody number 2. You don't want somebody who fades and blends. And so if I was in this draft, excuse me, as an NBA general manager, if I was in this draft, I might think about moving down and grabbing a couple of first-round picks later in the round. If I could get out of the 3 and 4 hole, I could move down to a 10 and 11 and 12 and maybe wind up with 2 or 3 picks. So I think you could maybe get some value down in that area as well, too. But, again, that's why those guys make that money. I think
is there a team that really needs that many players that they could draft in the first round?
well, if you can get two players in the first round, that's great.
Yeah, okay.
You know, and then you can hopefully build around them. I'll give you an example. Like the Orlando Magic have Paolo Banchero, and he was Rookie of the Year this year. And so now they're going to be down in there in a 6 hole. Maybe they want to try and trade up and get somebody who's complementary to Banchero that they like that will be drafted before they get to 6. I don't know who that player might be in this draft for them. But now you have Banchero, you say, okay, what else do we build around? And then you say, okay, if we can get into the 10 and 11 and take both of these picks, we can get a really good point guard and we can get a big man. And so that's the theory.
Okay.
See if you can build around it. But eventually, Paolo Banchero is going to wind up in L.A. anyway, Pete. So in the 3 hole, you have Portland and Houston in the 4 hole, Detroit in the 5 hole, Orlando in the 6, Indiana 7, Washington 8, Utah 9, Dallas 10, Orlando via a trade by Chicago is in the 11. 12 is Oklahoma City. 13 are Toronto Raptors, who I thought would be the number 1. And 14 was New Orleans. I'm prepared to tell you why today that I thought the Raptors would be number 1. I thought the NBA, well, there's 2 things that worked. One thing worked against it, one thing worked for it. I thought having this gentleman who is from France, speaks French, and being in Canada where they have a high French-speaking population still there, I thought maybe they thought that this would be a great way to engage with all the parts of Canada. But also, possibly, the NBA doesn't want its new franchise player not in the continental United States as well either. So I don't know how that all went down. It'll be interesting to see if San Antonio holds on to it or trades for the pick. If you trade this pick right now and somebody really wanted Wembanyama bad, the San Antonio Spurs are not very good right now. And so what you have to sit there and ask yourself is this one player going to make a difference for us? Or could we trade this and the 2 players we're going to get are not going to be so much a difference for us, but are going to start us back in the right direction? To say that Victor Wembanyama or any of these players that are currently in this draft are going to change your whole profile as a team, I don't think it's that type of draft. I don't think there's that type of player
San
in
Antonio doesn't have another pick until 33.
Yeah. And so,
Holy cow.
and you got the teams that win. Those teams are going to be way, way down in the mix there. The Boston Celtics have been winning. Milwaukee Bucks have been winning. They're going to be drafting way, way down in that pick. And what happens also is, this is just opinion, Pete, but what happens also is when you get outside the top 15 picks in the NBA, it really gets hard from that point on to find that diamond in the rough, to find that player that got drafted in the 2nd round and now he's, a great player. Or, like the Miami Heat have 7 players that went undrafted, to find those players, as the diamond in the rough, so to speak, in a draft. When you have 1 pick and you're on the clock for 15 seconds after the team before you just picked the guy that you wanted, it's difficult.
What's your backup plan?
You better have it. You better have a depth chart. And as you go through, this is what happens with people also when they go, I don't know why they drafted him. There's 2 theories in draft land. All right, the best thing is the number 1 theory is, and this is the most prevalent, I would say, not the best, but the most prevalent, is take the best player that's available. You can always amend your roster, engage with trades or free agency to buffer and do other things that you might need to do. But take the best player available, even if you take him for the purpose of trading him. Okay? So let's say you have Michael Jordan on your team, but the best player in the draft is in the same exact position as Michael Jordan. And for the Chicago Bulls, he is never going to get in a starting lineup. Okay? Unless you wanted to play the two of them together. But you might want to draft them, have it, and then
Trade them.
wheel the pick. Yeah, and so there's value. There's value in some of the assets that they have here. But I think as you go through the order now, it gives a little bit for me. And again, I say best player available. That's always kind of where I've been. But also what happens is when you look and you say the other side of the coin that we were talking about is a team that looks for something specific. Okay, we're in the 3 spot. We're drafting in the 3 spot. But we have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So we're not going to take who everybody thinks is in that 3 spot, but we're going to take a player complementary to him that's in everybody else's 5 and 6 spot, but we're going to take him here because we need that type of player. And so those are the 2 basic draft theories that you go through. It'll be interesting, again, to watch the combine today, take a really, really good look, to be able to compare yesterday and today, and then we'll come back and we will put exactly everything together for you in the draft with the 4 players that we felt were on the perimeter with Scoot Henderson, the Thompson twins, and Wembanyama. I don't know right now if we would even have Wembanyama in our top 5, Pete.
Wow.
I'm going to go out on a limb that there's better players right now that are in this draft than Victor Wembanyama in that top 5. And I think today we might get to see the big man from Purdue, Zach Edey, see some other good players out there today that I think are pretty high. I'd like to see Taylor Hendricks from UCF today too. But when you're in France and you're playing in a pro league in France, you don't get to go into the combine and to test your skills against everybody else. I would have loved for him to have been there yesterday because that would have been the first chance I have anyway to see him against the best talent in the United States, to see how he works out. He's in a pro league in France right now. I'm sure it's a very high-level league with a lot of good players. But European basketball is certainly different stylistically to the American game, and I would love to see seen him come down and test a little bit against our guys. So that being said, we're going to be off next week. And what are we on for time here, Pete? We got a minute, 2 minutes left?
Got about 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. So we want to also break out 2 songs for you, Pete. So we keep our little set list going here. A couple of songs that we like and we think that we're off the beaten path. You may not have gotten to see them. So the first song is up by the Rolling Stones, and it's called Waiting on a Friend. I like the song. I think it's an awesome song. And I think that if you go back and you listen to that, it has some really, really good vibe on it, and it has some different melodies and harmonies in there that are really, really cool. Okay? And I want to go out with our buddy JT, James Taylor, Massachusetts own. It's called Hurt Town 2. It's a great song. J.D. Southern, one of the great backup guys of all time, sings backup on that song.
Hell of a songwriter, too.
Yeah, just a powerful combination, those 2 guys. And together they really light that song up and do a great job with it. And so, Pete, we've just completed episode 10, and we're going to miss being around with you guys next week, but we will be back the next week after that. And that week we're going to do our draft before the NBA finally pulls their draft. So NBA general managers from around the land, all of the talent scouts that are out there, tune in because we've got the legit story. We've got the goods, and we're going to put this thing together for you in a fashion that's going to be amazing. And when we look at a player, we're looking at him through our eye test. When we're looking at a player, we do our data involvement. We look at that as well too. But at the end of the day, it has to be NBA ready. It has to translate. And that's what we're looking for as well too. That's why I love the combine. So I wanted to say, everybody have a fantastic 2 weeks. Get out and enjoy this beautiful weather that we're having. We will be back, and when we come back, we'll be in the zone. Take care, everybody, and have a great week.